Welcome everybody into Four Downs. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Greg Katz. Greg, we're looking at number 5 USC on the road for the first time this season, going out to Tempe to take on an Arizona State program that is hurting, but both ways, right? Literally, figuratively, any way that you want to take that. Injuries mounting up, coming off a shutout home loss to Fresno State. Head coach Kenny Dillingham in his first year there is dealing with it, and he's being positive. Stay the course. We're going. We've got a vision. I cannot imagine this is the team that he wants coming in to Arizona State right now to take on his team. But we'll jump into it. Again, 4 downs. Let's start with our first down, and that, throwing at you, the one thing that you are going to be watching when that USC offense is on the field against that Arizona State defense.
How quickly they score, and how quickly they score again and again and again, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's kind of what they did against Stanford. You had one little hiccup early in that game, and then it was just minute and a half long drives over and over and over. So you see SC's offense just rolling up points in this.
I mean, if they don't build up a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, I'll be scratching my head. I mean, I think probably 21 is probably at least for one quarter, but it's going to be how long they're going to keep Caleb in there. You're going to have this game on television, right? So everybody's going to be looking, and it's kind of a juggling game. How long do you keep him in so that he's in the running for the Heisman? You hate to look at it from an individual standpoint, but it all seems to blend together. So, it's going to be an interesting game to see how SC approaches it. Now, I think it's the first road game. They're expecting, I guess, a sellout now. That seems to be the word coming from Arizona. Yeah, I guess it's family reunion time there. One of their big, celebrations with kids and their parents. So, it'll be a fun, and let's face it, right now USC is number 5 in the country. Caleb Williams, that's quite an attraction, even if a team isn't doing well. It's kind of like, okay, let's see if we can just hang in there quarter by quarter. But that SC offense is going to be really difficult for Arizona State to deal with. I don't think there's going to be any argument about that.
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of be repetitive with what we've talked about in this show the last few weeks. When we've done this, and that's the USC offensive line. You saw against Stanford that they locked in that starting group, and I know Mason Murphy is still kind of hanging out there as that sort of +1 right tackle. He'll come in with the rest of the starters, but Emmanuel Pregnon at left guard, Jared Kingston at right guard. That was the first game against Stanford where they took every significant, important first team snap all the way through the first half. I don't think it's a major surprise that that's the best that the USC offensive line has looked this season, and the coaches talked about that. How do you follow it up? Right now, you take your game on the road. That's where you win road games, on the offensive line, controlling the game, all of that. Do they look as good as they did against Stanford in now this situation where, again, it's not Washington, it's not at Notre Dame, it's not some of those games that, again, we will get to later on, but this Arizona State defense, I know Arizona State has become a little bit of a joke because of that quarterback situation and because of the points they haven't scored recently, but the defense is okay. Like it's the defensive front, all of that, it'll test USC a little bit. So does that offensive line for USC come out and just take control of the game the way it did against Stanford 2 weeks ago? I think that'll be key, because you go back to last year, technically Stanford was the first road trip, but that was at best a neutral site. It felt even like a USC home game just in terms of the crowd. The first time USC got really tested with crowd noise was at Oregon State, and we remember kind of offensively what happened in that game. So it'll be interesting to see if that offensive line can kind of put that to bed, dominate early, like you said, run up point after point, touchdown after touchdown early on in this one.
I think one point I'd like to make, if I could. This is, according to the players now that were interviewed, They seem to like the idea of being on the road and playing. They like being the villain. And there's nothing like coming out for warm-ups and getting booed. That will fire them up. And their whole idea is we're going to shut this crowd up, and they're going to be into it because A, road game, but B, they're the bad guys now. They're the hunter, or I should say they're the hunted as opposed to being the hunter. So I want to see how they react to that. I think it's going to be favorable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've certainly said all the right things and seem prepared for it. You had an extra week now with the bye to get set for that. Let's go to our second down, and we're going to flip sides of the ball here. Greg, the one thing you're watching when that USC defense goes out on the field against the Arizona State offense.
Well, it's going to be interesting because we know that Drew Pine, who played against USC last year for Notre Dame, actually didn't have a bad game. The score wasn't good, but I think he threw for over 300 yards and had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. So I think he's going to definitely should keep SC on their toes. I think that maybe the scary part is, well, one thing, you've got Kenny Dillingham calling the plays. Now, if that isn't a pushing the panic button, what is? I mean, if I was his offensive coordinator, I'd go, we're only into like the third game and I'm already getting yanked. It's like Clayton Kershaw going out in the second inning. Right.
Well, you've also seen, I mean, the offense, they scored 24 points, 15 points, 0 points. So I understand a little bit, hey, that's the wrong way that we're going offensively.
Well, I mean, Kenny Dillingham is supposed to be this boy genius, right? Youngest coach in FBS football. He certainly doesn't want to get a stain going, oh my God, I lost it already.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a veteran quarterback, right? Who's used to playing USC. You're going to have a coach who's, was very successful at Oregon, and they think they'll be competitive, and they're going to take it quarter by quarter. Question is what happens when SC keeps scoring and scoring? Do they feel panicked offensively to try to stay in it? Kenny Dillingham said this week, we're going to do what we do. We're not going to change anything. I mean, he'll change it because he's calling the plays. So we'll see how much that matters. But I think in the end, it makes for, at least in the first half, an interesting, conundrum. Are they going to be that good with Kenny Dillingham and Payne at quarterback? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to look at you specifically at the USC stuff. That inside linebacker, Mason Cobb has missed the last 2 games. He came in as kind of the clear starter leader right there at middle linebacker. It sounds like kind of no hesitation with him, no limitations or anything. We'll see kind of what he looks like coming back into it. He's fired up to get back on the field. That kid just wants to play football all the time, 24 hours a day. He's ready to go. So what does that group look like? Because Eric Gentry is deserving of reps. You've seen Shane Lee be deserving of reps, Rajon Davis, and the coaches really seems like they really want to keep pushing Tackett Curtis in there to get him to come along as quickly as possible. You've got 5 guys. What does that rotation look like? Who do you trust? And I thought it was interesting that Lincoln Riley said, yeah, it's important for one guy there to play well, to do all his stuff right. But those positions work hand in hand so much that you also need to find the best duo at those 2 spots. So who works together with guys? How does that rotation work? I think that, to me, is kind of the most interesting spot to get figured out in terms of who do the coaches really want to rely on, who's playing well, who gets the snaps, and how do you keep guys kind of involved when, again, there's 2 spots, and I think we both agree, like 5 guys deserving of playing some time. So those 2 spots to me are really interesting. Again, in this game where you assume going in Arizona State, I mean, you look at down to nine offensive linemen that are healthy, and maybe one of those guys isn't even available for the game, a game time decision there. Down to 2 quarterbacks. Like it was tough for them to put practices together this week, just in terms of the bodies. So you assume the USC defense has a huge advantage at every level, at every position. So that internal thing for USC, how that inside linebacker position, how that plays out, I think is going to be really interesting to watch in this one. Let's go to our third down, and third downs, as always, brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports. just pits you against the numbers. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, PrizePicks is the perfect game for you. Go to prizepicks.com or download the app. Enter promo code SC. PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. So that's, you select 2 to 6 players, you can win 25 times your money on any entry. Again, that's prizepicks.com, promo code SC. Greg, let's take a look at what we went with here this week. And a couple selections here. I got Marshawn Lloyd finding success on the ground. I've got him more than 0.5 rush touchdowns. So basically just calling that he's going to score 1 rushing touchdown. And this was maybe a heart over head pick. Drew Pine at less than 167.5. I thought the 167 number was interesting. That's what Jaden Rashada threw for 167 yards against Oklahoma State when he went the whole way against Oklahoma State, 167 yards there. Now, the collection of 3 Arizona State quarterbacks that threw 5 interceptions and kind of tripped all over themselves with injury and scored 0 points against Fresno State. They threw for, I believe, 188. So the 167 is going to be keeping him to less than that is going to be work for the USC defense. But Pine is dealing with that, whatever that muscle injury is. I don't know if again, the Arizona State offensive line, if they are letting USC's defensive line, which feels healthy and motivated and all of that stuff right now, if they are teeing off on Pine, I don't know if you let him go the whole game, and certainly don't let him just sit in the backfield and take shots. I don't know. What do you think about those numbers?
Well, I think that I agree with what you're saying. Although I do think that Pine could throw for over 160, and I tell you why, because he threw for over 100 or 300 last time. He knows Grinch's defense. He's already gone against it. What he doesn't know is how much improved that the SC defensive line is in the rush. And let's not forget that Tyrone Tolini is coming back, who is really can be a force and add to support. They've got some depth there now with Tolini. And really, it'd be interesting to see. I hate to go back, but how Kenny Dillingham actually calls his game. How he, how many rollouts is he going to? Is he going to test SC on the edges, right? So he gets out a little bit in space and looks downfield. I think it's a real test, at least for that number passing. What's going to happen with the SC corners? I think we all could agree that they're a question mark, even though it's Arizona State. It's a little frightening when you think about Washington, a little frightening when you think about Notre Dame, but they're neither, Arizona State's not Notre Dame or Washington. But the point is I think he's going to throw for more than 167 yards, in my opinion. I think they'll try to keep him in the game as long as the other guys are really hurt, and he's the least of the hurt. They'll go with him as long as they can, and SC will try to turn him into a piñata.
Yeah, and I wonder if because of that, you just hand it off and try to get out of there. You try to keep a quarterback healthy through at least one game. So again, that may have been a little hard overhead on that pick there, but again, you can't guarantee that Arizona State's going to have a quarterback go all the way through. And we just saw with Stanford, the starter threw for, I think, 19 yards against USC because, again, knocked out early because of that USC pass rush that has been much improved this year compared to last year.
Bear Alexander will be hunting.
Yeah.
He uses his term. They will be hunting.
Yeah. And so before we leave third down, I want to get your shot at a couple numbers that I have here, and it's specifically USC offense. So no USC running back this year has double-digit carries. Marshawn Lloyd has carried the ball 9 times, twice this year. Do they start going to him? Does Austin Jones so that number 9? Does a USC running back get more than 9 carries? Do they go into double digits in this one?
It's possible, but you have to take into account, if SC's bigger fish are ahead of them. Colorado, you don't want somebody hurt in the ASU game, so you don't maybe give somebody the ball 15 times a game for what? to prove what. So I say they're probably going to space it out. I don't want to say limit, but space it out. As soon as they get a lead, I'm sure you'll see Joyner in there. Barlow will be in there running the ball. And that's certainly going to, give them, some reps. But by the same token, it's going to save Jones and Lloyd from any potential. You don't want to think in terms of injury, but you don't want to take a chance knowing that you're probably going to win this game handily.
Yeah, I mean, that it's so tough to play with any kind of thought of oh, they could get hurt or anything like that. Like you can't play like that. Travis Dye got hurt against Colorado in a kind of blowout, nothing, terrible Colorado team last year, and that hurt the USC running game quite a bit. The other number here, which I think is interesting, all the success passing that Caleb Williams and this USC offense has had all year, all the receivers everywhere. Nobody on this team yet through 3 games has 5 receptions in a game. 8 times a USC receiver has 4 catches in a game. And they did it 5 times against Stanford. There were 5 guys with 4 catches. Does somebody record 5 receptions against Arizona State? Again, that'd be the first time any USC receiver gets 5 catches in a game this year.
Well, again, I think you have to apply the same logic to the receivers, to the running backs. Remember, you got a couple of guys from Arizona. You got Singer, right? Deuce Robinson. You want to make them a little bit happy.
Brendan Rice going back there too.
Brendan Rice, yes. And you say to yourself, at what point do we call off the dogs in terms of, looking down the schedule, keeping everybody healthy? Hate to use that term again. So, you might see, a bigger rotation. I think they'd like to cut the rotation a little bit. But the point is in this game, I don't know if someone's going to get 5. If someone got 5, in my opinion, it would be Singer or maybe Rice, maybe. And then they'll rotate younger guys in there.
I thought it was interesting this week. Dennis Simmons talked about, cutting the rotation. Then he was asked, like, what number looks good to you in terms of the rotation and how many guys you want to play. And he said 7 or 8. And when you start looking through, so Mario Williams leads the team right now with 10 receptions. Then you've got Taj Washington and Zachariah Branch. Obviously, those guys are going to be hugely important to the offense. You've got Dorian Singer and Brendan Rice on the outside. So you're at 5 now. You got to find some more. Kyron Hudson is obviously going to be in there, which gets you to 6. Deuce Robinson, we've seen play a lot late and also some early a little bit there too. Mekhi Lemon, if he comes back, if he's back fully healthy, he missed a game earlier this year. So it's kind of everybody. I mean, it's kind of everyone. And like
when
you
said 7 or 8, I go, we're not talking about 3 to 4 or 5,
right?
7 or 8,
right?
Wow.
And Kenny Dillingham said, there's a lot of receptions spread around. You need to worry about 4 guys, right? I think he said 4 to 5, and so you talk about Mario and Taj and Zachariah and Singer and those are and Brendan Rice too. But again, even when you list that, you start getting into 6 and 7 and things like that. So yeah, I think that having so many receivers catch so many passes, it just puts a defense in such a tough spot for how do we defend this? Who do we put if we're going to match up? Who do we put our best corner on? How do we shade the field this way? What do we do? There just is nothing that you can kind of slant anywhere to defensively to say, well, they like to go this way. They like to go to this guy. It just, everything is just open for this USC offense right now. I mean, it doesn't just feel like they're playing basketball on grass. It feels like they're playing basketball with like 9 guys on the court against your 5 when they're out there offensively. It is such a matchup advantage that USC has right now offensively.
Well, when you look at the yards after catch, I mean, Taj Washington can score from anywhere. I think it's more scary when they catch the ball because they turn into, everyone starts looking like Branch. Maybe not the top end speed Branch, but they get it. They're going. So you better be around the ball to tackle them as soon as they catch it, or you got big problems.
Yeah. All right, let's go into our 4th down here. And we talked about numbers a lot there. We're going to do one more on 4th down. That's the number or the statistic for you that jumps out heading into this one? What's your number?
I think 17, because I don't think that Arizona State should score more than 17. And that's what I'm looking at. Another number I might secondary look at is sacks, to see how many sacks they can get in this environment. They're getting better. I think that, Bear Alexander's really, really good. And he doesn't have to really get a sack, but I think he's about due to knock somebody's head off. And I think that, Arizona State might be the unfortunate recipient, or I should say Drew Pine, finding out that when he gets to you, it's not going to feel good.
Yeah, my number is 8. That is USC's enforced penalties per game through 3 games. And like Riley talked about, that's a focal point, right? That's a focus. And he doesn't want to eliminate penalties. And he's said this since he got here. You can find really, really good teams that commit few penalties. You can also find really, really good teams that commit a lot of penalties. And it depends on what kind of penalties you're committing. He's going to be okay with most kind of aggressive, best foot forward, all of that stuff, playing hard penalties. He talked about kind of the careless ones. I think that the after the play penalties, some of those things, it was clear that he's bothered by some of that stuff. And so there's been a lot of, offensive holding. There's been a lot of special teams penalties. There was one after the interception there. And so curious if they can bring it down a little bit. Arizona State historically has been a team that can kind of goad you into some penalties, but Arizona State is right now at the top of the conference in terms of fewest penalties per game, tied with Oregon State. So that's going to be interesting. Again, I talked about kind of the numbers. The bottom 4 teams in terms of penalties per game in the Pac-12 right now: Washington, USC, Colorado, Oregon. So it's not as if those are the bad teams that are down there, but USC has shot itself in the foot a little bit. And the offense has been so good that 1st and 50 is probably manageable for the schedule they've played so far. But it won't be in South Bend. It won't be in Eugene, right? So that's kind of the focus at this point. And I'm curious how clean they can play in all phases, right? In terms of turnovers on offense, defense getting lined up. And then when it comes to penalties too, I think is going to be a really interesting kind of facet of, again, a game where we're talking about if SC's up by 30, 35, 40 going into half. I don't think it would be a massive surprise to either of us.
No.
So that's our look, our 4 downs look at number 5, USC going out to the desert. Again, first road trip for USC. First time they're going to be in the white uniforms this season. The number 5 Trojans taking on Arizona State. That's our look at it through 4 downs. Make sure you stick around with WeAreSC after the game. We'll have our 5 things game review. And then throughout the week, on Tuesdays, we drop Inside the Trojans Huddle, led by Greg Katz here. So for Greg Katz, for Erik McKinney, thanks very much for watching WeAreSC. Thanks for watching 4 Downs. Enjoy USC, Arizona State this weekend.